You're listening to the 3 Pillars of Success, a podcast that inspires people of all walks of life to gain perspective on what it means to succeed. My name is Geraldine Convento, and I'm best known for entrepreneurship, my skills in web presence, and SEO. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. Hey y'all, how you doing? This is me, Geraldine, the entrepreneur guide, web and SEO expert for another episode of the 3 Pillars of Success. And today I have a guest by the name of Celia C. Peters. Hey, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So we'll just go ahead and jump right into the questions because everybody's on the edge of their seat waiting to hear your answers. So who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do for a living?
My name is Celia C. Peters. I'm an artist. I'm a filmmaker and storyteller and visual artist. I grew up in the Midwest in Ohio. I've lived a lot of places, but I was born in Toledo, Ohio, and that's where I grew up. I do a few things. Film is my passion, and that's really the main thing that I do. But I do other creative work that still encompasses storytelling. So I'm a visual artist, and I would say that my visual art is similar to my film in that it is character driven, and I really focus on characters. My visual art tends to be photo-based, involving people. I've just embarked on a new path, which is audio dramas. I guess I have an audio drama that's going to be coming out very soon. That's my first foray into that area.
When you're not working, what do you do for fun?
I like to dance. I love dancing. For me, that's really an energetic and spiritual experience, communing with music. I love to experience art. I love to experience other people's art. And that is something that is definitely fun, but it's also nurturing. I like to watch films, and I also like to spend time with my nephews. I have 2 nephews who are 3 years old. They're fraternal twins. I love hanging out with them and seeing the world through their eyes, or seeing the world with them through their eyes.
One thing you talked about was looking at other people's art. And I think it's really amazing to see what other people see. I'm not much of I don't draw. I have an eye for art, but I'm not a visual artist. Whenever I've spoken to artists, and when I ask, where did these concepts from? They say, I just saw it and put it in this form. Or they say, as I was putting it together, that's when I started to construct everything that was on this piece of paper or was in this film. And that's always really fascinating to me. I didn't understand art before, especially abstract art.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how do people come up with that? And I didn't realize that people saw it in their brain and they actually translated it to their art form, which now I have a completely different appreciation for art than I did before.
Indeed. For me, the process is probably a little different for film and writing stories than for visual art. With stories, it always feels like it's coming through me. Something kind of hits kind of like when you hear a gong, and then it's like I'm hearing that and I'm feeling it, and then it just starts to come through. And so I always feel especially after I've gotten into, I've already started writing the script, it's coming out, and it's I have to get it out. I should also say getting it out, as in a first draft of a script, is really the beginning of the process, because writing is rewriting. And so in order to really mold the story like you would mold clay, you have to get it out of you first and get it on the page or on the screen, however you want to think of it. For visual art, I think it is more of that thing where you're seeing it. And sometimes for me, it may start with one element of the piece. In the past few years, I've been doing a lot of digital collage and also some more sort of abstract video pieces. I might just start with one element of the whole piece. And as I start dealing with that, the other things I can see, I see that it needs this and it needs that. And there's, and so then I can add those things and shift them around until everything kind of clicks into place. It's really interesting how that happens, because even I've been working on a new piece that I'm super excited about. And when I was almost finished, I was looking at it and I was happy, but I just something in my gut, I was like, this is not quite it. Like it needs something. I made the adjustment and I was like, oh, yeah, that was it. And it was really, that's an amazing feeling. It's really an amazing feeling. But that was something that I could only have known because I went through all of this process of putting all of those different things together and like whatever I felt needed to be pulled into it. Everybody has their own process, but it definitely feels like there's something larger sort of speaking through me.
Yeah, they definitely, what do they call them? Downloads.
Yes,
Yeah, downloads, spiritual downloads, or from the
yes,
universe, or wherever, whatever
yes.
anyone's beliefs are. I definitely feel that. I've had a couple of experiences like that in my life, and it feels amazing. It's very powerful. It's like, I have to do this, like, take action now.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Sometimes when the process is wound down and I'm stepping back to take a look at kind of what it is now, it amazes me because I realize how complex that whole process was.
The reason why we've invited you to our show is to learn about your interpretations of success and your pillars and all the other questions we ask every single Wednesday on the show. So, what does success mean to you?
To me, success is fulfilling your purpose, fulfilling your dharma. That for me is what it is because that speaks to, and I'm saying this from my perspective, it speaks to the purpose of your existence and the reason for you being here in this time, at this place, at this point in space time, in this life. I definitely believe that there are many levels and layers to existence. And I believe that, we are, all of us here right now are spirit, energy in this physical form, in this form of matter. And so I don't believe that this is the end. For here now, success means doing what you're here to do. And I don't know, for me, I don't know what that is. I don't know what my dharma is. I think that as you are moving toward it, you're feeling better and better, and things are better and better. Because I think if you're headed in the opposite direction, it can't be good. Like, I just don't believe that. Because for myself, I can sort of contrast how I felt at times when I was doing work for bread and butter and the work that I was doing was not related to creativity at all. And it certainly wasn't related to film or the kind of stories that I want to tell or the kind of characters that I create. And how oppressive that felt. It really did. In retrospect, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the reason that I felt I needed to do something else to survive and to not just survive, but to sort of take care of myself and maintain a lifestyle was because I didn't think that I could do it. I thought that it would be too hard or it would take too long to do it with art, with the thing that really moves me and that I feel is my purpose. It was like this oppressive thing. And when I shifted, when I made that shift away from that and kind of set an intention and made a decision that this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything else that's taking me in another direction. Then the way that I felt completely different because even if I'm doing a job for someone else and it's not my project, it's creative, it does not feel like work to me. Sometimes I get tired, of course, if you do it all night or you're going to be tired, but it doesn't feel like work. Whereas if when I was doing other things, I could be there for an hour and already feel exhausted. That is probably the biggest, like, broadest for me thing is like fulfilling your dharma. And then beyond that, but still related to that, is I think success is also adding value to the lives of others, which means at the end of the day, adding value to the lives of all of us because we're all connected. As disparate as we may seem or it may appear, we are all connected. And so if you're doing something that adds value to someone else's experience or to their life, that is by definition going to do the same for you. It's going to do the same for everyone. So I think that is, I definitely include that in the definition of success. Beyond that, success is creating a healthy, not just comfortable, but like enjoyable environment for yourself. I believe that that's success as well, because I do not believe that we are here to suffer. And I don't believe that we're here to be uncomfortable or in pain or uneasy. And so I think when you create an environment, and so that means no matter where you are, even if you were like trapped in a cave, but somehow you were able to make that cave better for yourself for the time you were there, that's success, as opposed to like being in misery the whole time. So it's all relative, but I do think that that is a critical part for your own personal comfort. But then again, getting back to this idea of us being connected, I also believe that when you are in a healthy and enjoyable environment for yourself, you're going to be operating at your optimal level, which again goes back to this idea of fulfilling your dharma. You're going to be in top form. And that again is going to benefit us all.
I totally love a number of things that you said, and I want to lift up a few of those points. As you talked about feeling oppressed because you were moving in a direction that wasn't for you. And I'm
Mhm.
paraphrasing what you said earlier. But the thing about oppression is that, to me, oppression is never going to equate to success. So a person can be feeling oppressed in their life due to any circumstance. It might be a relationship, a job that they work, a place that they live. And that's in itself is a sign to take action,
Yes.
move in a different direction. And that's going to look different for everybody. But you have to get out of that state of oppression in order to make a difference. So the next point you were talking about is the contribution to others and being able to fulfill your life dharma or your purpose, and in effect, impact all of us because we're all connected. And when you're in a state of, let's say, oppression, you get out of that. Sometimes once you're on your own or in a different place, you have to figure out, how do I go from surviving to thriving? And sometimes that takes a lot of trial and error. And it's really important not to be hard on yourself at that transitional period, because as adults, we have so much ego. It's like, we don't want to do nothing unless we're the best.
Right. Right.
But there's a bridge between not knowing what to do and being the best that I think as adults we really forget. So it's really important that you lifted that whole thing up of its process. It's just like create what you said earlier about creating art. It's the same. It's like treat your life as if it's a work of art as well, because it can come out to something beautiful, and it's going to take time and effort to achieve that.
I love that your work is, because I think your life is a work of art. Really, it is. And just to go back to that point, though, I do want to clarify something is that when I talked about being on this other path and it being oppressive, that oppression does not always have to do with money. There were points when I remember one particular phase where I was working in a job that was, I was being paid very well. I was really sort of setting in terms of logistics and stuff. It was optimal. It was a big company. There were so many things that were just taken care of for us. It was a place where, at the place where I worked at the workplace, there was a concierge to take care of things. There was a private jet that, if you had to go to meetings we were on the East Coast in the DC area. And so if you had to go to a meeting in New York, like go on the private. But when I tell you that oppression, because I was so mired in the level of output that I had to do, the amount of time and energy that required left very little for anything else. And so that at that point, I remember at times being so exhausted that I was like almost tearful because I couldn't even think like physically. There was no other, it wasn't even about just taking a nap. It was beyond that because it wasn't just a physical drain. It was a drain of my energy and my spirit. And so, yeah, I definitely had to like veer from that. That was when I was like, wait, something is very wrong here. The point that you made, I think, is a wonderful one, is that that's the red alert. Like you need to change directions.
There's definitely a lot of people, especially here in America, that can relate to that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
exact same storyline and are living that right now. So, our next question is, if you were to choose three pillars that are attributed to success, what would they be for you?
I would say belief. And that part of that, so that's like some like amalgamation of belief and mixed in with, I mean, confidence is a part of that, but also faith. I think that the faith part, though, that kind of implies a kind of ambiguity, right? You're going out on faith. And I think it needs to be beyond that. It needs to be belief. You need to know it. You need to know. So just to go back to that example of like changing direction and changing course, when you're in a situation and even though it's miserable, but it's what you know, or it may be miserable, but it's also very cushy. And then you're contemplating, well, changing direction and you don't know, like, how's this going to go? How's this going to pan out? You have to know. You have to know that it's going to work out for the best. And knowing that is not about guessing, it's about knowing it, it's about intending it. So I think that's one of the pillars for me. The other one is resilience. Even with that knowing, right? That doesn't mean that it's going to be smooth sailing 24/7. You will have challenges. That's inevitable. That's a part of the human existence. And so with those challenges, you have to, like, in order for success to be a reality, you have to have resilience to go through the challenges. If you fall down, get back up, keep moving forward. Because the thing that we know is that if you don't keep moving, you will never get to where you want to be. The only way you can get there is to keep moving. So for me, that's resilience. And then I guess discipline, the ability to discipline yourself. And that can be in ways big and small. One of the things that I learned about myself, so I'm a list maker. I make lots of lists. Usually like every day there's a list, right? And that has to do with me wanting to organize things, right? Organize my ideas. But I wasn't necessarily looking at the list. Once I'd made it, it's like, okay, these are the things. And then I wouldn't just like take a step back and just look at the list overall in a sort of holistic way. I would just like start doing the tasks so I could check them off. But one of the things I learned about myself was that I tended to do the things that I wanted to do first. And that's not a winning strategy, because sometimes the things that you want to do first are not the things that need to be done first. And so I had to change it. I had to discipline myself to say, I know, like, you really want to do this thing, but this is not the one that needs to be started first. You need to start with the things that are more time intensive or labor intensive, or what, prioritize in that way, in a way that's going to make it more likely that you're going to check off everything on the list. That's kind of a small-ish example of discipline, but I think that discipline is critical because that will enable you to do those other things. When you start to feel uncertain or doubt, discipline will kick in to say, listen, okay, you can do this. You got this. It's happening, right? Even if you can't see it right now, it's happening. Discipline is the thing that will tell you when you fall, like, get back up, get at it, not let you just sit there and cry. So you can cry, but just get up and keep going. You know what I mean? Crying is not a problem. Just keep it moving. So I think discipline is definitely important.
Yeah,
That's about your relationship with yourself.
absolutely. And I think it's really important that you say it, your relationship with yourself, because there's a certain discernment around
Mm,
discipline that we have to make as adults, which
yes.
is as a child, we were disciplined by
Mm-hmm.
others. And as we grow older, there's no longer someone, hopefully, there's no other people in our lives that are disciplining us for our actions. It's more so we're feeling the effect of what we're doing or not doing. And that's different. There's a choice there. I think as an adult, we have a choice to implement discipline into our lives. It's no longer something that's happening to us, it's something we can use as a tool when we need it.
I think that when you start down the path of self-indulgence, there's like a line, right? There's self-care, which is absolutely necessary and critical. And then there's self-indulgence. And I think the difference between the two just really has to do with what serves you. Self-care serves you always. You need it. And again, you need to give that to yourself. Self-indulgence is something that is more like a distraction. It's you allowing yourself to not do what you need to do. So whether that means you're doing something else or you're just not doing anything, whatever it may be, you don't want to do that. You want to keep it in that area where things that you do are serving you and serving what you're doing.
What is a roadblock that you've had to overcome in your path to success, and how did you overcome it?
A roadblock that I've had to overcome is being limited by immediate circumstances and feeling that that was the priority, that that was the end all be all, that that was what I needed to focus on instead of focusing on the bigger picture and where I fit into it. And that was something that I had to really, a very fundamental thing that I had to work through because it could have very easily taken me far off track. There was a point a few years ago where I was living in the Midwest and I was in a place that it's not really a film place. It wasn't a big city like I was used to being in, and it wasn't a place that was as diverse as the cities that I was used to being in. Anyway, at a point, it was very difficult for me to find work. And it got to the point where I started to feel like I was in the twilight. I had a resume and I had a lot of experience and I had a great deal of education, and I was being offered like something that was not nearly at the level that it should have been based on just my resume alone. And I didn't understand it. And I panicked, felt panicked because I felt like what I was being offered was something, and I was like, I'm not going to do this. And I didn't understand why is this the only thing I'm being offered. And at the same time, I'm looking at other peers, and it wasn't necessarily working out that way for them. And I just was like, I don't get this, and I don't know what to do. And I had to really dig deep. And I took a step back and I said, well, you need to find work in the places where people get you, where they get what you're doing. You don't have to explain it. They already are on the same wavelength as you.
100%.
And that's what I did. I hustled and I figured out where is there a need for the kind of content and programming that I want to create that's in alignment with what I'm doing, my path as a creator. And I started reaching out, not trying to, creating these connections. This was during a summer. I ended up that fall producing a panel at New York Comic Con on characters of color in sci-fi. And I had a company that sponsored it. And it went well. And then I did something else that was in another city and something else. And so even though I was still living in this place, I was leaving to go do the things that for me made sense with people who understood what I was doing. And it just, that was the beginning of a progressive path. And when I look back, I see this is part of the path that led me here. That was a step in the path that led me here. So it really could have gone the other way because there was a moment where I was just like, I have got to make some money. Like I've got to get a job. And what made the difference was me stepping back to look at the bigger picture and not just being stuck in those immediate circumstances. And I know that that sounds easy. It's easy to say. It wasn't easy when I was in a situation though. And I know that that's something that a lot of people deal with. I've talked to many, many, many people who feel creative, who feel that they are artists, but they're afraid to take that leap because they feel like, well, how do I know it's going to happen? How do I know I'll be able to afford to do the things I need to do? How do I know I'll be able to pay my bills? All these things. And that's a legitimate question. It's one that we all have to answer for ourselves. Having those kind of blinders on in a way and having that limited vision was a roadblock.
I am such a marketer because I was listening to your story and kind of relating every single piece of action that you did into what marketers do. So you did three things that are very key to launching any product, transitioning to a different market. You figured out this isn't working, this isn't the place for me. And you thought, where is my target audience? Where's my
Mm,
target market? And you thought about, okay, where will they understand who I am and what I'm about? So that was step number one. The second thing you did is you started to do market research. And to do that, you had to do networking. You got to know all the people and made the connections, asked them whether they resonated with what you're doing, came up with ideas based on your conversations with them.
Mhm.
Those three things are super critical to any business, whether it's going into a new market, starting a business, or anything. I'm at a loss for words, but I was just listening from that frame and I was like, oh gosh, but this is the three pillars of success podcast. It's not about business, but that was just what I heard. Like it was so clear to me. And you said it in a way that really anybody can understand because in some ways, the way that I heard that, I was like, wow, it's almost like life is about creation just as a marketing campaign is about creation. And there's all these different components that correlate with each other. It's just a different context. For me, as someone who works professionally, I work with clients who are launching products and services out to particular people. For you, you want to get your art out to the right people. It's exactly the same thing. And for others, they may be on their path figuring out what exactly is my purpose, and they need to do all of those exact things. Who's going to get me? Who should I surround myself with? I need to network. Let me figure out what it is I should be doing by exploring all these different things. It's all three actions that are exactly the same.
Indeed. That's so interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, but at the time, I was mindful of being methodical because I knew that I had to sort of have a workflow about it. Does that make sense? I didn't want to be driven by desperation. I wasn't looking for a quick fix. I was looking for like this, all of this definitively needs to change. So I wanted to be kind of methodical about it. So yeah, and I hope that that resonates for people and that it makes sense for people because I know that there are a lot of people in that situation and I know that it is literally jumping off a cliff. But I felt like I did not have anything to lose. Maybe a better way to put it is that I felt like I had everything to gain.
That's amazing. And you're totally doing exactly what you want to be doing right now, which I totally commend you for that. And I'm amazed at where you've come from and also the level of self-awareness that you've had in the journey. And maybe in those particular moments you didn't really think of it in that way because you're just doing what you had to do. But now to be able to articulate that with so much detail so other people can listen, gain insight, perspective, get inspired, and actually take action in their life is a really big contribution to this podcast. So thanks so much for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to hear that because that would be my hope for sure that someone else could benefit from hearing that.
Awesome. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up the show?
I would just encourage people from wherever they are, because all of us have had a different experience with this pandemic. Some have had it much worse than others, but from wherever they are, to really think about in every obstacle, there is an opportunity and that there's duality. And so, whatever has happened, to find whatever it is that is of value, that is of beauty, that is of opportunity there and go with that because it's always there somewhere. And I think that is for me is like the beauty of life is understanding that and then experiencing that, working through that, navigating that, moving forth with that. Be encouraged and don't limit yourself. I've said this to many, many, many of my students. If you can imagine it, if your mind can conceive it, literally, you can achieve it. Because if you couldn't achieve it, your mind would not be able to even come up with it.
Yes, yes, yes. That was another inspirational episode of the Three Pillars of Success podcast. I want to remind everyone that we're here every single Wednesday on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, everywhere you listen to podcasts. And remember to subscribe or follow us so you can get the alerts that we release episodes every Wednesday. It helps show other people that we're a great podcast, and also you'll get a lot of value. So have a great day, night, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world, and whenever you're listening to this. Thank you and bye.
Bye bye.